everybody. Welcome to the show. It's Mile High Sports Today. I'm Sean Drotar. That's Nate Lundy. Happy New Year. May all your post-holiday diets start going well. I know I have one of those I probably have to take care of, Nate, but I'll worry about it later because I intend to hopefully...
You're svelte. You are a svelte gentleman.
It's a matter of, it's just a matter of a perspective, right? Where your baseline is for the most part.
And some of us had those holidays where I'm convinced that dry January actually started from somebody who had spent a week or two with family and was like, you know what? I probably should give my liver a break. You know what I'm saying? I'm just throwing it out there. That I think that's where dry January originated. But I'll tell you what, people are going to be consuming some liquor on Sunday, depending upon how this game goes.
Some of it, of course, to see how it turns out. Some of it just to warm up. Supposed to snow, of course, in Denver tomorrow. Supposed to be cold and below freezing on the game on Sunday. Not that matters for the Broncos. This is the third consecutive game, Nate, in which they have had an opportunity to clinch a playoff spot. And it brings me back to the 2016 season. I talked about it for about a month when the idea for the Broncos playoff likelihood, right, was 90-something percent. Yes. 90% is not 100%. Back in 2016, the Broncos started out 8-4 under Trevor Siemian as the quarterback, and they went 1-3 in those final four to go 9-7, their last winning season up until this one, but they ended up missing the playoffs. The Broncos now have an opportunity there. They were 9-5. We were worried about the same thing. They have slipped since. They have to find a way to win this to ensure their spot. It's not the only way they can get in. Obviously, if they win or tie, they get in. If they lose this game, obviously you have to hope for losses from the Bengals and from the Dolphins. And that's where it gets tricky because if both of the teams don't lose, then the Broncos are out. So it is in control. The Broncos are heavy favorites because Carson Wentz is going to start instead of Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, for the Broncos, they're at home, a good opportunity. But that defense, the Broncos on the whole, shouldn't say defense, some of it's special teams, some of it's turnovers. But the Broncos in the last 4 games, even though they've gone 2-2, have allowed 24 points per game, a bit of a drop-off, and that's even brought down by the good performance they had against the Colts. So there's maybe a concern against maybe the long season. There's been a lot of taxing things. They were good, I think, relatively getting after the quarterback, Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. They got him to the ground. They hit him a lot. But it's a big game. And for Broncos fans who are taking it for granted, Nate, you and I have seen this over the years. Okay, the Chiefs organization is tanking the game, right? The Chiefs as a team are tanking the game. And you think, well, why? Well, first and foremost, you don't want your players to get hurt that are important. Mahomes, most of all, but we'll see who else doesn't sit. That's the main reason. Sure. Here's the other reason. And don't take it personally, Broncos fans, but it's just understandable. Only one team in the league, Patrick Mahomes, does not have a winning record against since player X came into the league. That is the Cincinnati Bengals, who have beaten the Chiefs at Arrowhead, have beaten the Chiefs in Cincinnati. We know what the offense can do against anybody, even though the Bengals certainly have their holes. If you're the Chiefs and you're basically thinking, we'll just let the Broncos win this, the Broncos are going to have to go to Buffalo, where they almost certainly will not win. But whatever. Playoffs is important for the Broncos. But basically, it's twofold. The Chiefs, one, don't want to get hurt. 2, they're not concerned about the Broncos. They're not concerned about the Broncos getting through Buffalo. They're not concerned about the Broncos eventually getting to Kansas City. And if they do, they're not worried about beating them. They are worried about the Bengals for obvious reasons. And I think the opportunity to have the Broncos get in and the Bengals know they'd have to sit it out. And there's no chance the Bengals maybe upset somebody in the opening round. Maybe they upset Buffalo. Maybe they sneak in and upset somebody. And then they come to KC. Kansas City doesn't want that. So this is actually not about the Broncos at all. It's Kansas City's twin desires to avoid injury and avoid the potential of running into Joe Burrow and company.
Well, and let's be honest, if you're going to send, to me, there's a little bit of a double-edged sword to this that I will throw out there. And that is, yes, you do not want to wind up playing Cincinnati. And remember, this is a Cincinnati team that some folks thought had a chance to be able to go back to the Super Bowl going into the season. There are folks that thought that for certain that they could make a run at the Chiefs and certainly at the Buffalo Bills as well. So yes, you don't want to wind up facing them, but at the same time, there was part of me that was thinking about this as we were looking at the different playoff scenarios, even going into week 17, let alone going into this final week of, well, if you were the Chiefs, maybe you wanted Cincinnati because you want to see if Cincinnati could go to Buffalo and help make your path a little bit easier.
That you'd like the Bengals over the Bills?
Well, no, I'm going to always like the Bills at home.
Yeah. No, but I mean, if you're the Chiefs,
if you're the Chiefs, you're like, well, maybe you could knock
them.
Maybe you could knock them off. Now, the Chiefs obviously have already accomplished what they want to accomplish. I do believe there is a piece to what you're saying about the idea of the Chiefs not wanting the Bengals to be a part of this, to be a part of the postseason scenario. That said, I also believe that this first and foremost is all about what you can do from an injury standpoint. You want to have everybody out there. There's no reason in cold weather at altitude in a game that doesn't matter that you should lose anybody. Like forget the high profile guys. Don't think about Mahomes and company at that point. Start to think about your depth on defense. Start to think about your depth on offense. Start to think about the fact that, again, we've beaten this into the ground. If you took every one-score game in the NFL this season and reversed it, the Chiefs would be picking like third in the draft. I mean, they have snuck by on razor-thin margins all season long. So there's absolutely no reason for them to try to tempt fate.
You still managed to pull it through, and you're 15.
If you're somebody that believes,
well,
and if you're somebody that believes in these sorts of things, like you have rolled the dice and hit 7,
right,
a lot this season, and eventually the snake eyes are going to hit you. And so if you're somebody that believes in that, in the law of averages and the idea of the pendulum swinging back, at the same time, it's not like you're trotting out your practice squad quarterback here, Sean. I mean, you're actually putting a decent quarterback on the field.
That's the point. And you're right. The injuries are the main thing. Remember,
but before he got hurt, before the Nick Foles miracle took place, right?
I
mean, Wentz was the MVP favorite that year.
And I'm sorry, during this long run that was finally, toppled by the Broncos when they had Russell Wilson, didn't Oregon State Beaver Matt Moore tear them up in a game when Mahomes got a little dinged up, and I believe it was in Denver, and Matt Moore still came out and played very, very well. That's the thing to keep in mind for Broncos fans. I get it. It seems like this is a gimme. The Chiefs are kind of punting it. Okay, that's true. The Chiefs are, but the players aren't. And I'll send you back to the game last weekend where San Francisco was playing their game late. They were still kind of in the mix. Brock Purdy takes a hard hit, goes out. Mm-hmm. Josh Dobbs comes in. In a span of 7 plays, Josh Dobbs cold. This 3 minutes and change left in the game, right? Josh Dobbs comes in, guy's bounced around the league, been a nice backups, played a little bit. We know about the aerospace engineering degree. He's not going to hurt your team, right? Kind of guy you're looking at to maybe think, if I need a backup, I'm going to call Josh Dobbs' agent and see what he's doing. But in the span of fewer than 7 plays, Dobbs comes in ice cold, goes 4 for 4 passing, and then runs for a touchdown. In that span of time, Josh Dobbs probably made himself, and I am not exaggerating, an extra $1 million.
Yes.
Because this late in the season, teams are going to be looking for backups. They watch Dobbs, who they already know that he's been experienced. He's a veteran. They know they like him. They know he's a good guy. They know he's prepared, provably there, comes in ice cold and keeps you in the game. He probably made himself $1 million. Carson Wentz's career for the last few years has been hanging by a thread, right? It's always been wondering, is he even going to still be in the league? You don't think the Chiefs may not care if they win or lose. Carson Wentz does. All the guys that are on the second string, that's their opportunity to go make themselves a name, to go make themselves some money, to make a next contract. A lot of those guys that'll be on the field are free agents. And keep in mind, again, you're talking about the backups on a 15-1 team. It is not unreasonable to assume that a lot of them are pretty good and can still get over on you if you take them lightly.
And look, I know that it's very easy for Broncos fans to sit back and rewind a couple of weeks, right? It was, hey, you just got to win one of these last 3, right? You just got to win one of these last 3. Oh, now you got to just win one of these last 2. Now you got to win the last one. And I get the idea of being a double-digit favorite. You're at home. You're going to have the crowd behind you because this crowd is starved for a playoff opportunity. Even if that playoff opportunity is to go to Buffalo and get your ass handed to you, at least it's an opportunity, right? You have all of those things that are factoring in. That's why the odds makers have this as a double-digit spread. But there are some mental pieces that you're talking about on both sides that you can't necessarily account for. I'm not worried about Bo Nix right now. I'm not. This isn't a Bo Nix discussion. I think this is much more of a Carson Wentz and an understanding that you can put another 7 figures into your bank account for your family if you can perform really well. And, you're right. Does Andy Reid want to see Cincinnati not make it to the postseason? Yeah, probably so.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't think that's going to stop Andy Reid from trying to win the game.
No, would he be mad if,
the Giants had a gold-plated yellow brick road for their quarterback of the future, and Drew Lock was like, no,
I'm going to have the best game of my career.
I'm going to have the best game of my freaking career right and completely screw your organization. So I think anything is possible here as we get to week 18. One of the things that we can keep in mind, and I know this has been talked about already throughout this week, but one of the things we can keep in mind is that Cincinnati plays Saturday night, not on Sunday.
Right.
So at least one of the 2 other games that have the potential of impacting what happens with Denver will already be in the books by the time we go to bed Saturday night.
And it's not a gimme. I mean,
it's not. They're on the road. They're on the road against the Steelers. And you want to talk about somebody that has been playing with a chip on his shoulder. We just talked about Drew Lock. We talked about the potential of, we talked about Dobbs. We talked about the potential with the Carson Wentz. It's Russell Wilson.
Right.
So, look at what Pittsburgh has been doing. And you talk about a home field, you talk about, because, there are still a few factors when it comes to what happens with Pittsburgh, right? I mean, I know, okay, they're in, but there's seedings and things like that. So this matters to them.
Sure.
And remember, above all else, and anything that Andy Reid and the Chiefs might want to do, you think the Steelers wouldn't love to knock one of their divisional opponents out of the playoffs? Of course they would. Sure I think Pittsburgh is going to be playing this game to win, and I think Joe Burrow is going to have to dig into that bag of tricks, and that he and Taylor and all of those guys are going to have to play their butts off to win this game.
Yeah. Now, if the Bengals do win for the Broncos, it is purely win or go home. That's it. You have to win the game.
Yes.
And then the Dolphins and the Jets will kick it off at roughly the same time as the Broncos.
But like I said, I do believe that if you told me to put the money on it right now, Pittsburgh's going to win that game. I really believe the Steelers are going to win.
Bengals slight favorites, but only.
I think Pittsburgh's winning that game.
A little bit surprising there, of course. When you look at this game coming up, Nate, and we'll talk to Troy Renck about some of the nuts and bolts as well. Courtland Sutton needs 82 receiving yards to get a $2 million bonus.
Yes.
Obviously, that's not what the Broncos are going to be concerned about when play calling, but he's been their leading. I know there's a part of it, but you don't think that, okay, because humans play this game. Courtland Sutton, that's money that the guys on the offense know he needs. Yes. He's already Bo Nix's top receiver. Yes. You don't think that Bo Nix, who, by the way, is fully aware that the veteran, one of the leaders in the clubhouse, needs that Bo Nix isn't going to try to get it to him. I think he absolutely will try to get it to him.
Well, especially, let's also go this route, especially if there are rumblings behind the scenes that Sutton is going to get extended or is going to stay, or they are going to, if there have been conversations even potentially with Bo Nix directly about this idea of, hey, we're going to work on this. We want your guy to be able to stay. Bo's got to keep playing with him.
Yeah.
You think that
you don't want to be the guy that cost him the $2 million bonus.
Courtland Sutton might, get him a really tricked out golf cart or something like that for his neighborhood in Castle Pines, as a thank you. But you better believe he's getting 82 yards.
Yeah.
That's happening, people. That is happening. Without question, that is happening.
Yeah, it feels like that is one of the things going to happen. Of course, there are other guys with incentives too. DeAndre Hopkins, one of them. Not sure if he's going to go, but we'll find out.
And we'll talk about it here before we wrap up the program completely. But I'm also going to share with you, there's a few other guys across the league that have various milestones or incentives or things like that coming up. Those are things from a sports betting standpoint to pay attention to. Okay.
Yeah.
When you're starting to think about where, like, oh, hey, I think this guy's going to get 50 yards. I think this guy's going to get 60 yards, even in some meaningless games. When you have something like what Sean just brought up about Courtland Sutton and the incentives, those are things that are happening across the league, and those are things to pay attention to when you're thinking about how you want to bet player props this weekend. Just want to throw that out.
Yeah, so we'll come back to that in a bit, but we have an opportunity to talk to our friend Troy Renck from the Denver Post. We have an opportunity to check with every single week about the Denver Broncos, the host of the Broncos podcast with Troy Renck as well. And Troy, thanks for joining us. Obviously, a very, very big week, big game for the Broncos Broncos' biggest opportunity they've had. Third week in a row to try to clinch a playoff spot. You and I have just talked about this. I mentioned it before he came on. Back in 2016, the Broncos were faced with a similar situation. They weren't able to get it done. What makes you feel this time around that they're in better position that doesn't have to do with the Chiefs resting everybody and not caring?
Well, I mean, they're hardened. There's resolve after these two losses. I don't think they should have won the Bengals game. I might be in the minority there. They got outplayed for the majority of that game. It was a miraculous comeback. They should have gone for two, obviously. I was shocked that Sean Payton, knowing his personality, that he didn't. The idea you were going to play for a tie for 10 minutes with Joe Burrow on that night, that's delusional. But they didn't feel like they should have won that game. They should have won the Chargers game. And now you're in this position of, why will they beat the Chiefs? They match up well against the Chiefs. They should have beaten them earlier in Arrowhead. The motivation is real. The one concern I have, even with, again, you have the bench that could send the Broncos to the beach. But again, when you take out Mahomes, you take out Chris Jones, you take out Kelsey, those are 3 Hall of Famers. Trent McDuffie. I mean, you take out 5 guys that are so talented. Chiefs aren't the same. Same scheme, not same team. My one concern with this game, Sean, is if the Broncos get off to a slow start, because the crowd should play a factor in this game. You have Carson Wentz working with backup linemen. If you get them in 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, huge advantage for the Broncos, who've already set a single-season sack record. But if you go into half 13-3, you enter the fourth quarter trailing, 17-13, it gets greasy because the anxiety is real. And people ask me all the time, Sean, what team are you a fan of? I've always been a fan of the team my sons are on or a team I'm coaching. And as a fan, you have this unbridled joy. You're delusional at times, but you also have this relationship with worst case scenarios. And my concern is, Sean, if they don't get off to a fast start, the crowd that should be an advantage is going to turn on them. And that anxiety and this fear and this colossal disappointment of 3 straight losses, you just like the cloud growing, this dark, dark cloud over the stadium. So I think that's important that they start fast and be in control most of the game. It doesn't mean they're up by, 2 touchdowns, but feel like you're in control to allow your crowd and the entire vibe to relieve some of that anxiety that will clearly be developing if it's a field goal game late in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and to that end, the Broncos offense of late, there's kind of been rumblings, and you read the contemporary reports from colleagues of ours and yours in the newspapers and radio stations around the country. And there's a growing sensation that while Sean Payton has done a really good job with Bo Nix and doing what he can with the Broncos offense, that does not have an awful lot of playmakers. At this point in the season, teams are starting to become familiar of what the Broncos can do and can't do, or can do and won't do. So the Broncos offense becoming a little bit more predictable at times, making it easier for some of these games of late to be closer against opponents that maybe they should have had a better run against. How can Sean Payton mix things up and make things a little bit more unexpected for the Chiefs defense to face?
Well, again, you and I would both say, hey, run the ball more, but they won't. He doesn't. He hasn't had a 100-yard rusher since he took over the Broncos. So I'm not even going to bring that up as a possibility. Could it happen? Of course it could, but I'm not going to bring it up because it never happens. You do have to have some balance, though, and Courtland Sutton has to be a big part of what you're doing on 3rd down. And Payton does a good job of scheming stuff up for Courtland Sutton and for these kind of reserve tight ends that end up open in space after delays in certain plays. I do think one thing that can open this game up for them is a little more RPO with Bo Nix. He hasn't run much, and I think there was a back spasm issue that they just didn't talk about much because he went like basically 3 games where he didn't run. He's run a little more. But in this game specifically, I would like to see Nix finish with like 6 carries, 55 yards. These are not scrambles, but 4 or 5 designed runs, Sean, to kind of open it back up a little bit. That ability to bring those linebackers in and allow Courtland Sutton on that drag route to get behind him. And also, you can't sleep on Marvin Mims. For whatever reason, Bo Nix and Troy Franklin have almost no chemistry on deep balls. It's the oddest thing, given the guys that were teammates. You just can't sleep on Mims. He's got to be involved in a deep play. I've said this before. Typically, when he's involved in one deep play or you hit one deep strike in the NFL, you win. And they probably should have won in some ways with his 51-yarder and his 25-yard touchdown. But Mims has to stay involved, not really in the running game. I don't like him in the running game. I'd rather give that carry to Jaleel McLaughlin because they're so similar, and one guy is a running back. But how do you get less predictable? I think RPO with more design runs for Bo, so around the idea of 5 design runs for Bo, and using Mims as a way to kind of counteract that because that RPO should open up Sutton behind linebackers, and using Mims as a way to just force this defense to be afraid of him getting over the top. And again, it might be one play. We're not sitting here saying Mims is going to catch 10 balls, but if Mims can get to around 50, 60 yards receiving, and one of those is a 35-yarder, that could be all they need.
Yeah, and obviously, you don't hit on the running game, but it is worth noting that Audric Estime's best game of the year, 53 yards on the ground, did come against Kansas City earlier in the year. The Broncos defense did, I think, a relatively good job with that explosive Cincinnati offense. Obviously, Burrow is a guy that becomes a problem when he's got Jamar Chase. Let's just suffice it to say that Burrow and Chase don't have the connection issues that Nix and Franklin have. That seemed to have come along with them pretty quickly. But the defense over the course of the season, do you see a little bit, there are blips, obviously, and there are explosive moments, but is there a concern that it's wearing down a bit, or was what we've seen over the last few weeks basically have to do more with Riley Moss and Moss's rustiness when he's returned?
Yeah, I mean, it's hurt without Moss. There's no question. And he returned to the worst possible opponent. That when T. Higgins is a 1. I wanted T. Higgins here. I want him to go after him in free agency. I get he has some injury issues, but to me, the guy's a 1. And if you want to say, he and Courtland Sutton are the same, I would argue that they're not. One guy is a true 1, and if you paired him with Sutton, I really like what you'd have there. But, it was a bad matchup for Moss coming off injury. And if you watch the coverage, I went back and watched a lot of those plays. It wasn't like it was bad coverage. It's just my only disappointment is he didn't make a play on the ball. You're close, but he's usually a guy that's going to eventually make a play on the ball. And he got into that, passive aggressive where you're aggressive after the catch. And he was just involved in way too many plays. So that's part of it. Part of it is they had to play more zone when he was out. That allowed more completions and allowed them to be less exotic with blitzes. And what killed them against the Bengals, they got 7 sacks. They couldn't get a takeover. They couldn't get a clear, scoop and score off of one because Burrow will put the ball on the ground, and he got smashed multiple times by Zach Allen, and didn't drop the ball. So, again, the scheme needs to get back to more man, who they are. Against Carson Wentz, you have got to force him to beat you. What I hate when teams play young quarterbacks and backup quarterbacks is we're going to sit back in zone. And when they do that, those quarterbacks get in rhythm with easy completions. And you look up and it's halftime and Wentz is 12 for 16 for 142 yards and a touchdown. That's a disaster. I want you to come after him. I want you to play man and be who you are. That's how they got to this position with 58 sacks, is by playing man defense as much or more than any team in the league and getting after the passer. I don't want to see a team that plays a bunch of zone and keep the ball in front of them. Now, again, if you get up 17-3, okay, that's different. But early in this game, force and take the game and punch Wentz in the face. Not literally, but figuratively. Force him to just have his mind exploding with pressure from everywhere. And if they don't, I think that's just cowardly defense, and it sets you up to lose. And again, I think they know they got to get after him, but they've done some weird things schematically these last few weeks, but they're healthier. Moss will be better. You're going against the receiving core that's not great. You have the advantage. Take the game to them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially when you're talking about Carson Wentz's history and where the turnovers tend to come from Wentz. That's the one knock over his career. When pressured, he's made big time mistakes, and it's one of the reasons that he's not the quarterback that people assumed as a potential franchise guy that he was with the Eagles before Nick Foles and all of that came about. But for the Broncos, obviously we know that Pat Surtain makes the Pro Bowl again 3 times in 4 seasons. Nick Bonito joins him his first time. Marvin Mims, All-Pro last year return, also returns. But you talk about the man coverage. Surtain has been now as good as anyone in the league, basically considered by most to be the best corner in the league. And now the odds-on favorite in Vegas to be the defensive player of the year. Can he lock that up with this game, or does that have anything to do with it whatsoever, knowing that it's the backups?
Well, I think it matters because again, the guy that's been second or at least was favored was TJ Watt, but Watt hasn't done anything these last few weeks. He's been hampered by an ankle issue, but they're on a 3-game losing streak. And if he goes out there and plays out of his mind in the finale and has a Zach Allen 3-sack, 4-sack game with a scoop and score, suddenly Surtain's not the guy again. So it does matter. And I don't think people are going to qualify it with, is he going to backups? He just needs to go out there and do his job that he's done. Would it help if he had a pick six? Of course. Would it help if he just had a pick? Of course. But in absence of Watt just going off in a Steelers win, I think Surtain is going to win the award. I think we've only had a couple of cornerbacks win the award over the last 2 decades, but Stephon Gilmore and Charles Woodson, if memory serves. So it's a rare accomplishment, a deserved accomplishment. It speaks to his value and his value to that defense. But I don't think he has to do anything special in terms of some crazy game. Again, a pick would help. The only danger he has is Watt has one of those classic, 3-sack, scoop and score, interception. I mean, where he, has the Gordie Howe hat trick game. I think that's the only danger because I can't imagine Surtain not playing well against the guys they're rolling out there for the Chiefs. It just sets up for him to have a really good game, even if it doesn't show up with some huge moment.
Yeah, the Broncos pass rush will be a big part of this, as we know. 3 of the top 20 pass rushers in the league in the terms of sacks, obviously Benito, then Jonathan Cooper, and Zach Allen as well. Defense has the opportunity to set the zone and set this tone for this game, obviously, with that man coverage. We'll find out more about it. You want to follow Troy Renck's podcast, of course, the Broncos podcast with Troy Renck. Between now and Sunday, when they grab one and catch up, what are they going to hear, Troy?
Yeah, listen, kind of breaking this down, and I do also take the we go away from the micro to a little bit of the macro, Sean, of what the Pro Bowl voting shows regarding this team, that they did not have one offensive skill player even make 5th alternate. If you think it's just you and I, Sean, that complain about the lack of playmakers, clearly the coaches and other players see it the same. I get fans, and fans see it that way too, because I'm sure based on their fantasy league teams, have a lot of Broncos on there. It just speaks to the idea for me. If Sean Payton's going to continue to call games where he leans on the pass, he's got to change the personnel around Bo Nix. They have to get a pass catching tight end, and they have to get another receiver, because you can't call games like this and lean on Nix as heavily as he leans on him with this personnel. It's not fair. If you want the kid to get to his ceiling and you want Payton to feel comfortable with the way he calls games, they got to be in April after free agency and after the draft. So on May 1st, having a clear new tight end and another number 1 type receiver.
The Broncos hopefully don't have to worry about that until at least a couple weeks from now, when they'd have an opportunity to make the playoffs. But they'll have to take care of business at home more than likely first. We'll find out. You want to catch up on everything that Troy's doing over at the podcast. We're delighted to have that as part of the My Life Sports Network, and of course, everything that Troy puts together at the Denver Post. Thanks for the time. Busy weekend, obviously. Appreciate you giving us an opportunity to pop in and catch up with you.
Happy New Year, Sean. Great to be back on. Looking forward to talking at least one more Broncos game next week, my man. Take care.
Ears open. Thanks, Troy Renck, joining us from the Denver Post. And on Friday, we also make sure we check in a little bit. Every team, every day. We do that right here at My Life Sports. And that includes going all the way down to the high school ranks. Of course, football season is over, but it doesn't mean that the sports season is over, because the high school sports calendar continues unabated. It is basketball season, among others. And joining us to talk about it, the editor-in-chief of ColoradoPreps.com. Make sure you grab that pre-Colorado Preps app, driven by Ford, and get all of the latest right in your pocket. Dan Mohrmann joins us. Dan, thanks so much. Obviously, big weekend for the Denver Broncos, big weekend in Denver for all of the teams, but high school basketball getting going, and from the early going, especially on the girls' side, we're starting to see a couple of teams and a couple of names bubble up.
Well, yeah, and Sean, one thing that has been, as we've been getting out of football season and into hoop season, I, in my position, forget about someone like Sienna Betts. I almost said Lauren Betts, her older sister, who, of course, is a standout at UCLA already. Sienna's going to join her next year, but this girl has been playing out of her mind, and this, of course, was going into the holiday break this year, but she's averaging 22 points and 19 rebounds a game in this early stretch for Grandview. Those are numbers that would make Nikola Jokic blush a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you're talking about some of those numbers in the on the prep side, that's impressive stuff. Shorter games, obviously, and all of that. So, I mean, impressive there. But the girls scene is really interesting, and you've talked about some of the early teams that have gotten going. Specifically, some of the schools people aren't thinking about. You're paying attention to bets, but some of the Rangeley, Marino, some of these programs that are off to really good starts.
Yeah, and both of those teams are undefeated down in 2A. Rangeley is sitting atop the 2A RPI. Chassa is not publishing the selection and seeding index quite yet. There's just not enough games for you to really get a genuine feel for where teams would be seated if the playoffs were to start today. So I would imagine in the next couple of weeks that's something that they'll start putting out there. But for now, Rangeley's sitting at number one in the 2A RPI. Marino's also undefeated, and defensively they've been outstanding. They give up less than 23 points a game. They're the defending state champions. So this is a squad that I don't really think is going to lose any traction in that. And when you start seeing these matchups with these small school teams, they get really, really fun. I would like to see how this plays out between both these squads. And it's obviously something that we'll be keeping an eye on over at Colorado Preps.
Yeah, ColoradoPreps.com. And of course, the app, as I mentioned, driven by Ford, with all of the latest for all of that as well. Well, let's head over to the boys' side where, at top 6A, you have somebody that's starting to round into form that's looking like a bit of a powerhouse.
Yeah, and that's Rangeview. They had a senior transfer over from Eagle Crest, LaDavian King, who was one of the top players in the 6A tournament last year. And he's fitting in nicely with Sean Palmer's group. And he's averaging about 14 points a game. He's shooting over 40% from 3-point range. He's been a big reason behind the Raiders, jumping out to a hot start. And they went down to the Aztec Christmas tournament in Arizona, won all 3 games and beating a top 10 Arizona team. So this is a squad that's been playing really well. I would expect them to continue to play well after the break, and it's one that I'm looking forward to hopefully getting up there and seeing soon.
And when you get down to the smaller ones, of course, you just talked about some of the girls' programs in Rangeley Marino, but Strasburg looks strong in the early going as well.
Yeah, and I was texting a little bit with Strasburg coach Kyle Bowlers today, just trying to get a feel for what's going on with his boys. His son Tice has just been outstanding, averaging about 20 points a game, adds in some rebounds and assists, and by all accounts, he's been a tough kid. They come down and they're at Woodland Park next Thursday. So I told Kyle, if everything works out, I'm going to try and make my way up to Woodland Park High School. It's right around the corner from one of my best friend's house. So maybe go hang with those guys, go over to Woodland Park. My buddy's the head coach over at Manitou Springs, which would be a league game for them. So I don't think I'd have to twist his arm to go over to Woodland Park and do a little scouting and see Strasburg in the process.
Yeah. So when you get into this time of year, obviously, and you have the holiday break, and you have some of the scenarios in which you try to adjust, from football to the rest of the sports calendar. Swimming's going, basketball's going, wrestling's going. For a lot of these athletes, does that break alter anything for them? I know for the people who maybe didn't play some of those sports, to think about how that sort of shakes out. Well,
and yeah, at times it can. It just depends on what you're doing when you're away from your teams. That's usually a big factor. I've talked to a lot of teams who feel like they finally get their basketball teams into basketball condition when you're heading into that third week of December, and then you're breaking for 2 weeks. And if you have a player or two that's going on vacation, not really hitting the gym as much on their own as they would if they were maybe around, you lose that conditioning. So it usually does take about a week or so for teams to refine their footing if they're not, getting after them on their own. Chassa allows for optional practices December 30th, December 31st. So you're kind of right in there. You're not allowed to practice on New Year's. You're not allowed to practice, obviously, on I think it's Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, that whole stretch. So a lot of these teams, especially teams with good momentum, there is a little bit of concern of refining that footing and making sure that you're playing at that level that you were heading into the break.
Obviously, when we have a chance to talk with Dan Mohrmann, it's a lot of fun because this guy's travel schedule is bonkers, and then yet you find yourself every single morning on that Manitou incline. If you haven't followed him, you want to follow him for the rest of it. But also, by the way, on top of a savant in multiple high school sports, very, very skilled long haul driver, but also a very fit fellow with the incline every day. You do that more in like a morning than I'll do in my entire life. But also now, as it turns out, amateur photographer. So I mean, you want to follow Dan on
Look at that.
I mean, wow. I mean, geez, guy, what else do you have time to do? You sleep at all?
That's always a good question. The usual answer is no.
I'm like, no, I don't even want to go down that, let alone climb it.
Going down is always the fun part. Right now, it's when you get above that stretch of the railroad ties that you see right at the bottom of the picture. That's above the false summit. That's usually the sketchiest part. I finally smartened up. My older brother would yell at me religiously for not doing this, but last year I smartened up and bought myself a good set of spikes. Yeah. So it makes going down that pretty easy. This morning was a little bit of a rare sight. That was a good sunrise. I woke up at I had my alarm set for 5. I woke up at about 4:50 and stretched it out another 15 minutes just because, there's not a lot going on to the point where I had to be in front of my computer at 8 a.m. like a normal day, Sean. So I knew that we weren't going to do this until our usual spot, and there just hasn't, because there's no high school sports. There's not anything leading up to it. So slept in a few minutes, and it turned out to be a really, really good decision. And I already have this vision of Danny Bailey just shaking his head as he looks at this. I guarantee you that guy's, I don't know if he thinks I'm stupid or if he's just amazed at what he's looking at right there.
It's a really beautiful photo, but I mean, the idea of, I value it. I don't go to bed early, but I value my sleep. And the idea of like, my alarm's up at 4, but I naturally just wake up at 10 till 5 or whatever. But I decided to sleep in until your normal alarm time. That for you feels lazy.
It was a little lazy this morning, and there's a normal group of people that
let my alarm wake me this time, as opposed to just waking up before my alarm. Like, what a lazy bum! Goodness, damn.
Well, and when you go into the new year, it's always funny because you have a list of things you either want to accomplish or grow on or do that. So I have these stupid ideas in my head. One of them is I think I'm going to try and run the Pikes Peak Ascent this year, which is going to be a challenge in itself. So it's already in the back.
Is that another thing I wouldn't do in my car?
It's 13.1 miles straight up Pikes Peak.
Okay, I might do that in my car. I'm not running it.
You're running up our trail trying to survive for 13 miles.
Like a mule or a Sherpa or
no, you get nothing.
I'm not doing it then. No,
you get whatever you can carry in your backpack.
Take the pictures and let us know what it looks like.
Right, but now that it's in my head, I have this idea of like, okay, I need to start building my endurance on my runs, my actual runs. So tomorrow, I don't know what I'm going to do. I think I need to go further than 6, but not as far as 9. And it's also Saturday, where I should sleep in, but I don't know. I'll make that decision when I wake up in the morning.
I respect that. I will make that decision when I wake up in the morning too. And if it says AM, I will go back to sleep, because that's how I roll on weekends whenever possible.
Well, real quick, because I always love listening to Troy, and I've been listening to you and Nate all morning. I do want to talk a little bit of Broncos, because we did have the roundtable published today, but There was a question that Doug Ottewell asked. What makes this season a success? And Nate's response was very to the point, that it's already been a successful season because they got over that 5.5 wins. And Mark Knutson shared that sentiment a little bit, but I'm here to tell you guys, the goalposts have changed. The goalposts have moved.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you were sitting at 9-5 with 1 win away from the playoffs, if the Broncos do not win this week, as crazy as this sounds, a 9-win season is that's a failure in my mind, just considering where they were 3 weeks ago.
I agree with you. And that's what I've been warning about for a month, when everyone got excited and saying, oh, well, that's all right. I said it like back in 2016, the last time the Broncos had a winning season. This is exactly what happened. They went 1-3 in the playoffs, and they haven't been there since. And I think you're right. And I think there's more to it. I think you found your quarterback. That's obviously a big deal. I think guys like Zach Allen looks this year like the guy they wanted to get last year. So, I mean, there's a lot to like. Quarterback first and foremost, but I agree with what you're saying, because at a certain point, look, when you realize you have 4 games remaining, and at that point you just have to win any 2 of them, right? Or you have 3 games remaining, really. At that point, you have to just win any one of them, and you don't do it. The odds are, and I understand the Broncos fans look at it, they could lose and still get in. They could, but the odds are that both the Bengals and the Dolphins, who know they could get into the playoffs, probably will not lose. I mean, the Broncos will probably have to win and get in. And the Chiefs, I get it. They don't care about this game in particular when it comes to their health, but Nate spelled it out well early in the program when he pointed out that Andy Reid would still like to win it and will be coaching to win it. He'll just be doing it with the second string guys. And for the Broncos, yeah, I think especially this almost makes it worse. If you lose this game, if you somehow lose this game, knowing that you just needed to win one of your final three, you couldn't do it, and you couldn't do it against a Chiefs team that wasn't playing the majority of its people, and you're at home, yeah, I mean, the season will still be successful, but the taste it leaves in your mouth, it won't be good.
So two points on all that, Sean, is Sean Payton coached them out of 2 wins in the last 2 weeks.
I agree with you.
So that's a hard reality to face right now, that you didn't have to beat the Chiefs, that you could have beaten a Chargers team that was gettable and a Cincinnati team that has struggled so much defensively. And Sean Payton coached them out of those 2 wins. And I've gone back and forth on Payton this year because he will do things that will put me firmly on his side. And then we see what happens the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's been a lot to like about the way that Sean Payton has coached this team. And I've been.
And managed the team.
Yeah. And I have been a critic in the past. And I was one of the people who did not think that Sean Payton would have been the right coach for this football team. And I did not think he'd be able to perform the way he has performed with a rookie quarterback. So we've never seen him do it. Most of those things have all been, I think, passed with flying colors. But yeah, I mean, it's been difficult to watch a little bit because as we talked about with Troy Renck a couple minutes ago, we talked about what could they do as teams start to understand what the Broncos offense looks like. And Troy even said, I'm not going to bother saying run it more because I know that Sean Payton simply will not do it. And you do look at a guy and say, yeah, he is who he is. But it can be a bit of a concern if the stubbornness will cost you games. And I talked about this a couple weeks ago. I said, one of the concerns I have with Sean Payton is he feels a bit like a guy who'd rather lose a game coaching it his way than win a game coaching it a way somebody else wanted to do it. And the fact that that's basically how he acted when he had Russell Wilson indicates that that's just sort of who he is.
Yep. That's exactly right. And the last point I want to make, and then I'll let you go, is, or you can let me go, however this works.
Yeah.
We are going to
stick this up here in case we'll put a little run it here like Sean did on his.
Yeah. We're going to find out on Sunday, because this now is the biggest game that the Broncos have had since I would say the 2015 season. You're going to find out whether or not Bo Nix is a milk drinker or if he's a beer drinker. And there is a difference.
Yep.
If this is a guy that's going to go out, compete, and have this opportunity, and I do not care that it's against guys that wouldn't normally be playing for Kansas City. He has to meet the moment. So is Bo Nix going to be a milk drinker, or is he going to be a beer drinker? And that would be a great sports talk radio segment. Just listing athletes on that criteria, Sean.
Well, we know a few of them just stylistically anyway, but we will find out. It is going to be a fascinating game, and I agree with you. I think the season will be a success, but the taste it leaves in your mouth will be different. If they
lose on Sunday, it's not.
If they make the playoffs and they get smoked by the Bills in Buffalo, I think fans look at it and say, okay, that's not a shock. The point was to get into the playoffs. You've broken that seal. Now you can go back to getting there more regularly and things get better. But yeah, you have 3 straight weeks at a point where, I think fans were excited when there was a 94% chance, I think, of making the playoffs for the Broncos. Mm-hmm. And you find a way to lose that. Yeah, the off season will have a very different discussion than you could lose in any way on Sunday. You could get blown out in Buffalo a week later. And the discussions would be totally different. You could lose that game 40-0 in the playoffs, and it would be totally different discussions than if you lose against the Chiefs. You have to find a way to win this game.
Right. And I get that. And I know that, that kind of declaration is moving the goalposts, and that may not be fair to Bo Nix, a rookie quarterback. It may not be fair to Sean Payton, who doesn't have the roster that he probably wants. But at the end of the day, Sean, life's not fair.
No, it isn't. And you have to go out and take the opportunities when you had it. The Broncos could have even maybe been in that mix last year. They didn't do it. This is a big one. So we will find out. Of course, check out ColoradoPreps.com for all the latest. Grab that Colorado Preps app driven by Ford for all of the latest. Dan Mohrmann and his team do a tremendous job. It just gets better over there at Colorado Preps. That's why we get a chance to talk about it every single week. Dan, thanks so much. Enjoy the weekend, whatever ungodly time that you wake up to go climb a mountain again, and then enjoy the rest of the weekend sports, and we'll have a chance to talk next week.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Sean.
But keep the photos coming. It makes me feel like, maybe if I felt like getting off my lazy
like you accomplished something by proxy almost.
Yeah. I won't pawn it off as
me, and I did that, so you can claim a sliver of it. Yeah, that's what you're getting at.
One degree of separation from climbing that ridiculous thing. So I'll take it. Dan, thanks so much.
Thanks, Sean.
I appreciate it. Dan Mohrmann joining us at Colorado Preps. Obviously, tremendous stop over there, and all those seasons now coming along. It's a lot to make sure you catch up and stay up with as well, because tremendous Colorado sports athletes. Talked about Sienna Betts, joining Lauren next year at UCLA. I mean, Colorado girls basketball has been putting together a tremendous amount of talent going national over the last few seasons. So you don't want to miss it. ColoradoPreps.com is the spot. Of course, there are a lot of things going on in the NFL this weekend outside the Denver Broncos game. A lot of them may very well impact them. The Broncos, of course, have to get the win to make sure they get in. You don't want to leave it in other people's hands. Look, I get it. You missed the playoffs for as long as the Broncos have missed the playoffs. If you quote unquote back in, then you back in. Whatever. The point is to get into the playoffs, and they have an opportunity. We'll find out more. Obviously, the Bengals, as Nate pointed out, will play on Saturday against the Steelers. With the Bengals to win that, the Broncos then would have to win in order to make the postseason, and they need to focus on that anyway. Nate comes back and joins us.
Winning,
here.
I mean,
it would be better. And as we talked about,
can I tell you how
props,
obnoxious
right?
it is to stay up until 2:00 in the morning at a bar in Europe in order to watch the Broncos F it up in overtime?
Well,
I mean, that's obnoxious.
I'm
y'all.
happy you found a place.
Oh, here's okay. Here you go. First world.
Yeah,
problem.
first world. I'm going to live
problems.
vicariously through everybody. I live
first
with
world problems for you.
Nate's doing what?
Yeah, first world problems for you. Here is what I can tell you with definitive travel advice. Not that I am the most worldly traveler. Sean has traveled way more around the globe than I have. However, here's what I will tell you to know if you ever travel to Europe and it is in football season or you have a team that you want to watch. Find an Irish pub.
Well, that's just a good rule anyway.
End of story.
That's just smart anyway.
Find an Irish pub, because they will have whatever streaming services you have to have. They will have the televisions. When I walked into this pub, my wife and I, it was, they had darts going on every television.
I was about to say, did you catch any hurling out there? It's
no, it was
super crazy field hockey, except you can whack people with sticks.
No, it was darts.
Okay.
Some intense darts.
Yeah, there's some intense darts.
That what's his name? That 17-year-old kid that's just unreal.
Some prodigy. Right.
Yeah, that guy was on. And we walked in. Took a while to find a seat. It was a popular spot. And we finally, a couple people got up, so we were able to sit right at the bar. And I leaned over the bar and I said, "Can you find the NFL game for me?" And this place was like 2 rooms, and they had it on in the other room. We just couldn't find any seating. And so the guy was like, "Yeah." And I said, "I know you have it because it's on one of the TVs in the other room." And he was like, "Okay, no problem." Finds it, boom, right there, so that Erica and I can watch, and be able to watch the game. And then we were like, we'll crash. It'll be fine. We'll just meet. And then, and then the game went the way the game went. And then it goes into overtime, and then it keeps going and it keeps going.
Well, good thing they don't close at 2 a.m.
But we made friends. If you guys were following me on social media, you saw that I was sending out some messages of what was happening. We recruited the people around us as Broncos fans.
Mm-hmm.
Met a great couple from the UK. They were cheering for us. They actually bought a round of shots when the Broncos tied it.
Nice.
I mean, this is what you want at an Irish pub, right? And by the way, no, I was not in Ireland. That's what makes it so funny. Doesn't matter what country you're in. Go find an Irish pub.
They're around. Right.
There was one an 8-minute walk from where we were staying, and that is what we found. A place called Scholars in Rome. That's where we were.
Yeah. You have a good Italian to learn there if you ever
but
go.
it was great.
Yeah.
It was great. And the other advantage, by the way, if you find when you find the Irish pub, the other advantage for a doofus like this guy right here is the Irish pubs are, owned by expats from Ireland. So they speak English.
Right. Two most important words for non-Italian speakers, mi dispiace. Just trust me on that one. That's the one you want.
We had a great time. We recruited
fault,
people around us. People were cheering. The guys that were watching the darts, when the dart match came to an end, they started watching the game with us. We had a great time. I'm sorry that I digress, but I can tell you, if you ever need to be able to do it, and we have our Irish NFL friends,
right?
That we always see at the Super Bowl on Radio Row.
I pop on with them pretty regularly. Yeah,
and that's like, just find an Irish pub and you'll be fine. Which is not unlike here in the States.
Not that hard to find.
The only difference is the Irish pub is basically your European equivalent of a sports bar.
Yeah,
because they're going to have televisions, without question. So no, it was that was painful. So now you bring it around to this weekend, which has the potential to be even more painful, doesn't it? I do not want to sit in the cold this weekend and watch this team lose. Please don't do that to me.
This is my first game this year.
That already happened.
As a fan, I'm just going to sit in the stands.
That already happened in what?
And of course,
2012. What was Baltimore? 2012.
Yeah.
Is that right? Danny's not.
Yeah, the 2012. Right. Yeah, Peyton Manning's first year.
Thank you.
-4.
Good Lord. I've never been that cold in my entire life. Sean, one thing from you that will tell you that the Broncos got a W. One thing. Give me one thing that if you saw it in the stat book at the end, or you saw what if X happens, the Broncos are going to win the game.
2 rushing touchdowns.
Okay.
Of any distance, 2 rushing touchdowns, I think would do it.
I'm going to say that this team, and I agree with that, by the way. I think that would be a very good indicator. The one for me, I'm trying to figure out the number. I'm going to call it 40% success rate on third down.
That seems manageable. I mean, 40.
I mean, look,
better.
And the reason I bring that up, and the reason I bring it all the way back to me sitting at this pub, watching the game on Saturday night, which for me was Sunday morning, is because in overtime, when the doink happened,
right,
all they had to do was get a first down.
Mm-hmm.
All you had to do was get a first. You could have tied, and you're in the playoffs. All you had to do was get a damn first down, and you couldn't do it.
Yeah, and part of the reason they can't do it is because this team still, you've talked about it. Troy Renck came on and said that he's not even going to bother as a keys to the game to run more because he's just given up.
He's tired of talking about it.
Even because
we're all tired of talking about it.
Going to do it. He's not going to do it, and that's just kind of who he is. But it has led in these last couple games to some clock management issues because you're not running the ball, and it's led to the couple of 3 and outs here and there because you're not running the ball and you're putting yourself in longer third downs. He could simplify it, but I think at this point, Sean Payton is who he is, and you're going to have to take the good with the bad if you're Broncos fans. But yes, it is their game. It is their game to win, but there is fascinating stuff. We talked about Courtland Sutton needing 82 yards to get his $2 million bonus. It seems like one way or another, they'll find a way to get him that. It also seems like they'll probably need him to get that if you want to ensure you'll get a win. So those at least sync up nicely.
Yes.
But yeah, you'll find out on Saturday. Of course, we have the Ravens with, as far as I can tell, and I don't have any background on this, but the Ravens are favored by the Browns over the Browns on Saturday by 20 points.
Yep.
I do not believe I have ever seen an NFL line of 20 points in my life.
Right.
I'm not even sure I've seen one that's close. I mean, still, even in this NFL season where there's a lot of bad teams, double-digit margins in the NFL is still pretty infrequent. 20 is borderline unheard of.
Yeah, it is. Although I got to be honest, I feel like maybe we saw that a little bit toward the end of maybe not last year, but the year before. I know there were some games that were stupid lopsided like this, but yes, you're definitely seeing it.
Like at what point do you look at it, even say, I might even take the Browns?
Well,
it's the NFL. I mean, if you're the Ravens and you're up 16 points in the third quarter, fourth quarter.
Now I will say this:
good.
I'm definitely not taking the Browns because the Ravens need the win to get the 3. Am I right about that?
Yes.
Trying to remember.
And
I spent a long time on planes yesterday, folks. Give me
the
a
Ravens,
little bit
the
of a
two
break.
games on Saturday have to do with the AFC North.
With the AFC North.
Yeah.
Thank you. So anyway, they win. They get the 3. Now, but 20 points is a lot.
That's a lot.
Now, if it's me and I'm gambling, and you know I will, I'm going to bump that up. I'm actually going to stretch it a little bit higher. I'm going to alt line it is essentially what I'm going to wind up doing. And then I might do the same thing where I say I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to take the Broncos like -2.5. I'll bring it down from the 10.5. There's a handful of the games that I would do that.
I hate that Broncos 10.5. I don't care who's not playing.
No, I don't
see
like
that.
It's still I'm with what we talked about at the beginning of the show with Carson Wentz, with all that. Like I'm still not comfortable with 10.5. I'd love to blow them out. Believe me, I'd love to blow them out. I'd love it. I'd love this to be early in the fourth quarter, and the DJ's having fun at the stadium, and the fans are having fun.
And the Chiefs have already packed it in, waiting for their bye week.
Yeah, and you get to the point where the Chiefs are purposely running it, right? Because they're just like, oh, just get the clock over with, right? And you're just doing those kinds of things. I would love nothing more than that. And again, this is like beginning of the fourth quarter. Miles is up there on top of the scoreboard with his flag, and we're just celebrating. I'm hoping that is the case. That way this team can finally get the postseason and the Broncos fans can get what they wanted. But I'm going to say this because I said it in the roundtable conversation that's at milehighsports.com that we put together every week with each of us sort of chiming in on stuff. I said it there. I've said it on this show. I'm going to continue to say it. Even if this team loses, if you are someone that says that means that this season was not a success, I can't help you. I can't help you. The number one thing that this team needed was to find their quarterback.
Yes.
And they did it. That is, I'm sorry, if you made a top 10 list of things that the Broncos needed to figure out in the 2024 season, that is all 10. And they did it.
Yeah.
And so there is absolutely no way, regardless of how I'm feeling at 6:00 Sunday evening, it is impossible for me to say that this season is not a success because they accomplished the number one thing in all of American sports, which is to have a quarterback for your team that you believe in. And we believe in this quarterback. We believe in this quarterback. So this season is a success no matter what. I am not going to buy into the narrative that all of a sudden we needed to move the cheese.
Right.
And our target changed. No, my target was the same thing. We need a damn quarterback, and we need to know that we're on a path to be able to compete with the Chiefs. And that path is there. It's going to take a couple seasons.
Yeah.
But the path is there, regardless of what happens on Sunday.
That's the point I think it's important. And we'll talk about this obviously on Monday when we find out what happens. Obviously, it looks good for the Broncos. And then when it looks good for the Broncos to make the playoffs, and if they don't, obviously there are questions that we'll have to ask. And some of those questions may involve clock management, may involve commitment to the run, may involve some of those things. We know that the cap situation will get better, but for the Broncos, the season will be a success either way. But the final taste in your mouth will be bad if they don't find a way to win this, because you had to win one of your last 3. You probably should have beaten the Chargers. Probably should have beaten them. And again, poor clock management on Sean Payton's part there led to that, and a lack of willingness to the run directly leads in many ways to that loss.
Yeah.
They could have beaten Cincinnati. I don't say they should have beaten Cincinnati. They could have. You and I both had that Bengals game as
I picked the Bengals
as
to
a
win.
loss. Yeah, as a loss. So
that's
not a shock. But knowing that the Chiefs don't care about winning or losing, they're benching half their people. You're at home. You have to win. It's irrelevant for them. To blow that game would be really, really hard, especially if it happens in the same fashion, because the Broncos decided not to run late in halves. They're passing the ball when they don't need to be passing the ball. That needs to be a spot that would be brought up. Now, can they switch it a little bit? And then we're not talking about this. You hope hope so. But I think the Broncos do get it done. I'm not going to tell you that I'm not going to watch it at times with my hands, hands in front of my eyes, because I don't think it's going to be amazing. I don't think it's going to be pretty. I don't think they're going to blow them out. I think that the second string Chiefs are pretty talented and have an interest in winning. And as you pointed out, Andy Reid is still going to coach it to win. He's just going to coach it as if he had fewer players and those players were hurt. So it's not as if the Chiefs are going to say, go ahead, Broncos, take the game.
No,
they're not.
But there's also 4 games this weekend that have double-digit spreads, and the Broncos is one of them.
That's one of them.
Tampa's one of them. Green Bay's one of them, and we've already talked about the Ravens.
So we'll find out what the Broncos do. They hope for a matchup against the Bills.
I will tell you, because I know that as we wrap up the show, I mentioned this before. Folks, go out and you can find all of these. They're written up. Yahoo's got them. CBS has got them. ESPN has got them. Go and look for the different milestones that players have.
Oh, yeah, in their contracts.
Not just in their contracts are part of it. Look for the incentives like the one that we talked about before with Courtland Sutton. However, also go and look for the milestones. Like, I know this is a stupid, simple bet, and it's probably like minus 850 online, but here's an example for you. Aaron Rodgers has 499 regular season passing touchdowns.
Yeah.
You think he's not going to get one this weekend to hit 500?
When he's saying he knows that he might be done.
So I'll throw that one out there as an example for you, right? He's sitting at 499.
That would also, by the way, really help the Broncos who could stand a Dolphins loss.
Sure. So you've got that one sitting out there when it comes to different milestones. I don't think he can get there, unfortunately, in the game against the Chargers, because I actually really wish that he could. But Brock Bowers is 9 receptions away from setting the record for receptions. He's a freaking rookie.
Yeah.
And he's going to break the record.
Which was held by Mike Ditka in receptions.
It's
receptions and yards. It's silly.
It's silly what he's dealing with
the quarterbacks they're throwing to him.
Yeah.
I mean,
then
Jalen Daniels is going to be offensive rookie of the year, but I'm with you. Bowers
it has only happened twice since 1992. 2 times that a receiver has led the league in receptions, yards, and touchdowns. The equivalent of the Triple Crown, if you will, for baseball. Receptions, yards, and touchdowns at the wideout position. As of right now, that's Jamar Chase. If he holds on, the only other 2 guys that have done this since 1992 are Steve Smith Sr. and Cooper Kupp. Kupp did it 3 years ago, 3 years ago, I think. Yeah, 3 years ago. Steve Smith did it back in 2005. The last time it was done before that, you have to go to the other sharp, Sterling.
Wow.
With the Packers in 92. That's how far back you have to go to be able to see what Jamar Chase is doing. So as much as we've talked about how Cincinnati's going to be a disappointment and Bengals fans are going to be mad if they don't make the playoffs, and I don't think they will. Again, I think Pittsburgh wins on Saturday night. What Jamar Chase is doing is really, really amazing. It truly is. So yeah, there's some little milestones like that you're going to want to pay attention to. It was the same thing that we did, by the way, from a betting standpoint at the end of the MLB season. You always look for some things like that, right? You know, you talk about, this guy needs 1 more stolen base.
Let me give you one with the Broncos that might matter. Will Lutz is 1 behind Jason Elam for the most made field goals in the season. 2 would give him the new record.
Yeah.
I can see that being something. If you're looking at Will Lutz more than X number of points and 2 field goals, I would expect to see him get a crack at that. Courtland Sutton has his chance for the Denver Broncos. By the way, it will be their record against Kansas City in their history, 55-73, but at home, 36-28. So obviously that's been better. We'll find out what they do on Sunday. It will be a cold game. It will be an important game. It will be the Denver Broncos' 1,000th regular season game on Sunday. They'll be going with the 77 throwbacks.
That's a lot of
top to bottom.
A lot of games.
A lot of games. Only 12 other teams in history have played 1,000 regular season games. So the Broncos, with an incredibly important one, sets up their future very, very positively. We'll get a chance to talk about it on Monday.
At the end of the day, 2 words: Irish pub.
Okay. See, I thought you were going to go about it winning, but that's even, who doesn't agree with that? Like everyone agrees with that one. Of course, it makes perfect sense. Do so responsibly because we want you back here on Monday, of course, because we're going to talk about the end of the NFL's final week. The playoffs will be set. Hopefully, the Denver Broncos will be in it. We'll break it all down for you on Monday. Troy Renck will be back joining us. Thanks to Troy for joining us from the Denver Post. Check out that latest Broncos podcast by Troy Renck, wherever you get your podcasts. Proud to have that as part of our Mile High Sports family. And you have a couple days to catch up and listen. So download all of those. While you're at it, check out Colorado Preps. Dan Mohrmann joins us from Colorado Preps every week. Basketball going really strong. Obviously, wrestling, swimming, everything's going on there. Grab that free Colorado Preps app driven by Ford to get all of the latest in your pocket as well. Thanks to Danny Bailey for putting everything together. Nate Lundy joining us, of course. We do a lot of moving parts on a Football Friday because that's what we try to do. Every team, every day. The Broncos have their biggest opportunity since the end of the 2016 season. Let's hope that this one goes a little bit better than the last one. For all of us here at Mile High Sports, I'm Sean Drotar. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you Monday. Have a great weekend.